to professional development. Matt.
Thank you, Brett. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Nelson with ADK Consulting and Executive Search. Since this is going to be an interactive session today, just like school, we have everyone just kind of get forward here, stand up. I know, just move up to the front of the room as possible, close as possible, please. Carl, that means you too. Come on, Kevin, come on up. And there's an opportunity to actually win some really fabulous prizes too for participation. All right, right there. Gladys, get a little closer. You're too far away. Everybody over there. All right. So thanks for joining us today after lunch. Hopefully some more students will roll in here. So we're going to start with the topic of professional development. And I think what is important with this talk today is really the takeaway that Herb Kelleher of Southwest Airlines said. Take your job seriously, take your profession seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And that resonated well with me years ago when I was at Southwest Airlines. So if we could start with the first picture, we've got some really good incriminating photos here. We're going to start with, not that one, not that one. Nope. Okay, all right, here is a photo of a little boy in a dress, and that actually is me. And if you look there, my height is 2 feet 1 inch. And the X's there indicate that I'm not married. And that was in the Philippines where I was born, actually, in Subic Bay. And the second photo there, Cole, is a picture I'm very proud of there. Can anybody guess who that is on the left? Who can guess? Rhymes with Simmons, Richard. Richard, who said that? Who said that? Okay, Carl gets that. Okay, and then Snooki's on the right-hand side. Give that to Carl there. Okay, so that's me there, not taking myself seriously. Okay, next photo.
Hold on, Matt. You just said who's on the left. Right?
Who's on the left? The one on the left is Snooki. Okay, who can guess this? Kid whose mom doesn't know he's out of the backyard. That's Barry Rondinella of Orange County. All right, and then if you were to look at the next one, that's looks like Vladimir Putin getting buried by his kids at the beach. All right. This is okay. I'm glad you said that, Gladys. Okay.
No, so what, I have not aged at all, and so what ended up happening, this was, I got into aviation because my professional soccer career failed, so I had nothing to fall back onto, so. And then, of course, and Barry will tell you, and those of you that know me, I usually come to these conferences with a lot of different types of haircuts, and that still remains the same. Bad haircuts and bad decisions is the key to airport management success, all right?
And then, so describe that there.
So this is just Air Force pilot training a million years ago, and like Matt said, I look like I'm about 12. Yeah, come on. So in this one, this is actually when we had the summer conference down in San Diego, and we had a family beach day. Those two little girls, one behind me and to my left, are my daughters. They're now 18 and 20. So yeah, just a great family day, getting buried, and yeah.
Okay, and then Gloria?
So that's actually part of airport management. That was one of the responsibilities, clearing snow. And so I was actually in this loader on conference calls. It was dumping about 2 feet of snow. And I got a call from Gwen, and she said, you won a scholarship to attend the annual conference in San Diego. I couldn't have cared if it snowed like another 5 feet that day. I was like, I'm going to San Diego, it's warm. So that's just one of the, yeah, that was just before she called, actually, so.
That's in the cab?
That's in the cab, yes.
About there?
And that's in a loader, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes. So for me, I have a great work-life balance, and so I am an adrenaline junkie. This is mountain biking. I do racing, so skiing, mountain biking, and flying. It's how I fill my weekends. This is how, so I have a plane, And this is how I keep my dad occupied. About every 3 minutes, I say, "Where are we?" He's such a talker. So for a 3-hour flight, where are we, Dad? Where are we again? Yep. So.
Great. Well, that's it for the PowerPoint today. So
What I want to comment on, if you could go back to the mountain biking thing, her mascara.
that's not Cyrus, is it?
Her mascara is perfect, right?
You have to do it in style, obviously. So.
Very good. Okay, so today's topic on professional development, since there are so many asymmetrical lines to get to where directors are and people in the industry end up going, I'd like to have these panelists talk about how they got to where they are today. And since Cyrus has the microphone, I'd like you to start with what you did and perhaps talk about your accreditation and the process involved with that.
All right. Well, kind of like everybody in the aviation industry, a lot of people get into it thinking, I'm going to be a pilot, and then something happens, and you end up in airport management, right? So that was the case for me. I grew up outside of Denver Stapleton Airport, so I'm kind of dating myself. Don't let the baby face fool you. Why everyone else was hating the noise that was generated from Denver Stapleton, I was enamored by it. So I wanted to get into the industry. I wanted to fly. Ended up going and joining a variety of different flying clubs and got my private license. Ended up going to Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, and fell in love with airports by doing an internship at Denver International Airport, and so I was stuck with airport management from there. From there, great mentors. Stuck. Yeah, I'm stuck, but it's glued. It's a happy stickiness. Met some great mentors along the process, and I got exposed to the A.A.E, of course, and Lori Beckman was my boss at the time. Jeff Price, who is involved with the accreditation and certification program. You all may have heard that name if you all have taken the CM exam. He's the contractor that the Board of Examiners has hired and A.A.E has hired in order to prepare people with the workshop, and he also authored the modules and the exam as well, and so he was my first boss, and so they really got me involved in the program, and from there I've always wanted to be on the education side of helping people with professional development as it related to being an accredited airport executive. So variety of different steps to get to where I am today. Currently, I'm the chair of the Board of Examiners, so we oversee the accreditation and certification program. You all have some great representatives here on the BOE. Mark Whitso sitting there. He's an at-large examiner here, and he also helped preside over, or he did preside over, the accreditation workshop that C.A.E sponsors, which is a tremendous opportunity for those that want to get into the accreditation program. Kind of gives you an overview of what to expect while you go through the process. And also Kevin Smith, I'm not sure if Kevin's in the room, but Kevin is the regional examiner for the Southwest chapter. So those of you that are interested in going through the accreditation process, especially if there's some students here, once you break into the industry and you get a little bit of experience underneath your belt, you definitely need to know some of the individuals that are involved in that process, and they can kind of walk you through some of the things to expect. Very powerful tools of information to get your foot into the door in the airport management industry.
Cyrus, I got two questions for you, two follow-on questions. First of all, can you tell me how you got to where you are today, and also your involvement with the, as he's from the East Coast, your involvement with the chapter out there and how that might differ from C.A.E. So if we have some students here that are going to be transitioning over to the East Coast, what that looks like and how you can take advantage of chapter.
So you kind of put me on the spot with the comparisons between C.A.E and Southeast chapter, right?
That's okay. Tell me the difference.
Well, I'll go with your last question first. Well, the Southeast chapter, we've always identified ourselves as the love chapter, but I've always received nothing but love from the Southwest chapter. So part of the reason I'm here, your president, Jennifer Maples, if she asks, I comply. So I'm here to talk about whatever she'd like me to talk about, and I've always felt nothing but love. As a matter of fact, I've crashed a variety of different C.A.E functions. So you all have always made me feel at home here as with some of the other chapters since I've been in my role with the Board of Examiners, but definitely Southeast and the Southwest are definitely top of my bill. So how I got here, I mentioned the internship at Denver International Airport. From there, got into the consulting side with Landrum & Brown, doing work for Chicago Department of Aviation. And from there, also took another consulting job with Reynolds Smith & Hills in Jacksonville. Missed smelling jet fuel, the kerosene, wanted to be out on the airfield doing operations. So started working at the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, went through a variety of different operational positions, and we'll kind of talk about a little later getting stuck and pigeonholed in one element of airport management. So at that time I needed to, as I grew, needed to get involved with other aspects of airport management. So got into business development and properties, and got into general aviation, and opportunities opened up at the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority in airport noise. Remember, airport noise was what attracted me to this industry in the first place. So I did that in Orlando, and then went through a variety of different positions until I came to become the director at Orlando Executive Airport, which is our reliever airport for the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority to help support Orlando International Airport. I like to call my airport, though, Orlando's original airport, because it's where everything started. But
Great, thank you. And students only, what does CM stand for? Who said that? All right, certified member, there you go. $10 richer, congratulations. Okay, Barry,
Oh, I thought we were going oldest to youngest, so I'll go last.
we're doing the beast and the beauty.
Okay.
and I am the beast. Yeah, you're right.
The love chapter. So I was an absolutely horrible high school student. I barely graduated. Went to a junior college because it was 13th grade, right? I didn't know what else to do with myself. Almost flunked out of there because I could always find somebody to throw a Frisbee with. In fact, I think I remember missing every Monday a whole semester because I was buying concert tickets to resell to people. One day, I was eating somewhere on the campus, and I overheard these people talking about this aviation program, and that you could actually get a pilot's license and learn about flying. And I said, wait, what? So I transferred into that, and it really was a spark for me. It changed my whole life. I became serious about my education and got on the dean's list and all that stuff. And one day, a colonel from some Air Force base came to talk to us about becoming fighter pilots, about going to ROTC and becoming an Air Force officer. And again, I said, wait, what? So I ended up going into the Air Force as an enlisted guy first because I heard it was easier to get a pilot slot if you're already enlisted. So I did that and got to fly for a while. And then one day I got out, and I didn't know what to do after that. And understand, 6 weeks earlier, I was flying supersonic jets, and I ended up taking a job at a little airport called Whiteman Airport in Pacoima, California. So I'm pumping gas into Cessnas and Pipers just to get back around aviation, because I loved it so much and I missed it. The assistant general manager there was very weak. He didn't like to do his work. So I just started doing it, and I liked it. And one day, the manager came in, and he put a job bulletin on my desk, and he said, you should put in for this. And I did, and I got it. It was a little airport in Lompoc, California. I ran the transit system, the 8-bus transit system, and the airport. And then I went down the street to Santa Maria Airport, a little bit bigger airport with some commercial service. Was the assistant general manager and acting general manager there, and then went to Stockton, my first director job at a commercial service airport. Learned a lot, spent about 7 years there. Realized that if I was going to progress in the industry, I needed some big airport experience. So an opportunity opened up the road at Sacramento, deputy director of operations. So I put in for that, and lo and behold, I got it. And while I was at Sacramento, I would benchmark the other medium hub airports in the state to see how we were doing. And this one airport kept coming out on top or really close to the top, John Wayne Airport. And I said, you know, someday I want to work at that airport. Because how fun would it be to go someplace where you didn't have to fix everything, right? It was already okay. So I kept looking at that, and I did realize I couldn't go straight from being a deputy director of operations at a medium hub airport to running a medium hub airport. So I had to have an intermediate step. And that for me was going to LAX and being the director of operations. 5 very tough, very long years. Not much of a personal life during that time. Just the pace is so much. You work at a large hub airport, you know what it's like. But got out on the other side, and a job opened up at John Wayne Airport as the director. And backing up to LA, it was kind of a funny story. I applied just kind of, it was a Hail Mary. I figured I'll never get this job. And they called me and said, we'd like to have you in for an interview. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, come in. So I interviewed, and they called me back and said, well, we'd like you to come in for a second interview. Hi, Vernika. Is today your birthday? No. Tomorrow? Okay. 3 days from now, it's Vernika's birthday. And they invited me back for a second interview, and then they called me and they said, we'd like to offer you the job. And I said, really? So anyway, I worked there, and then the John Wayne opportunity came open, and I have been there now for 4 wonderful years. Great airport. Politics are kind of tough, rough and tumble. The noise situation isn't great, but anyway, that's my story.
Thank you, Barry. For the students, so Barry works at an airport called John Wayne. What are the other 2 names that are associated with John Wayne Airport? Orange County and who said that? Who said the 2? I'll give it. Come on, students.
Hey, he's giving you money.
I'm giving free money, guys. Good to you. Are you sure? Okay, all right. All right, Gloria.
So I never wanted to be an airport manager. So why am I here today amongst the other airport managers telling you how to develop into that role? When I was 15, I learned how to fly, and so I started flying before I could drive, and that was the career path I wanted to be on. ATP, flying for the airlines, and somehow, like many of us, that kind of morphed into management. So I had an associate's degree in aviation science, professional piloting, and at that time I did everything I could, every job I could to pay for my flight school. So I was a waitress, I did landscaping, I worked at various airports. I was known as the airport rat, just because I was there all the time. And and I remember even sometimes, thinking like, this is just providing me the financials to put myself through this training. And sometimes you would be looked down or talked down to as a waitress, and I just remember thinking, I can fly, what can you do? And so through college, I started the aviation management program. I ran cross country. I practiced 3 times a day. I worked at the airport, so part-time, and I drank about 12 cups of coffee a day. I remember feeling my heart palpitations at some point, having irregular heartbeat, just thinking this is the end goal is that bachelor's in aviation management. And so after college, I graduated and moved. I did all my schooling in New York, so all I could imagine, I wanted to move out west. I was done with traffic, New York traffic, no more. I imagined Dust Bowls, cowboys, horseback riding. So I moved out to Colorado and began my work in aviation insurance, where I eventually transitioned into operations security, ARF, and snow removal, just because I missed being on the airport environment. And so learned everything about that job, and I remember in that role there would be times, how many of you have actually ever done snow removal here? Okay, so we have a couple. Yeah, we have some. And I remember Christmas Day, it was -17, it's 2 a.m. in the morning, whiteout blizzard, you're waiting for these passenger, the CRJs to come in, and I'm outside the broom, you have it's about 2 feet from you, and you're adjusting the blade, and it's snowing, you're wet, it's greasy, and you're hoping that the other brooms can see the lights on because you're out on the runway. And I just remember thinking, like, you're exhausted, and it's, what am I doing here? What's the end result, and where is this going to lead me? So even in those roles, there was always something, a learning experience that eventually brought me here today to be talking with you, to be talking about the professional development. And last night I was talking to a student who's been working at 2 years at an airport in operations, and they said to me, I just can't wait to be a supervisor, leader, and a manager. But you have to be in that role and take the time to learn the job and get the experience in order to bring it into the role that led me here today. So once I was in operations, I changed into capital planning and projects and management, and so it gave me more of a broad range and understanding of how to work with stakeholders, diverse community, particularly in Aspen itself. It was a personal story. This one time I was walking my husky through Aspen, and this lady came up to me and she said, "Your dog would make a fabulous fur coat." A real Cruella de Vil, and she walked off. Very Aspen of her, yes. So it was, and actually this other time we had some. That's a mass hole in Massachusetts. And actually, this other time, it was just a very particular community, and so this other time we had a complaint, and someone at the top of the mountain was saying, "Your rotating beacon is keeping my cat in the living room awake, so can you do something about that?" No. So eventually I had an opportunity. I leaned on some of my mentors when I was in operations, and they encouraged me to get into aviation planning. And so kind of like Cyrus, I joined the dark side. So I learned about airport master planning, economic statewide system plans, and really some of the reasons why airports are in existence, the economic contributions they make in infrastructure development and planning for airports. And one of my favorite projects was actually a spaceport application license for an airport. So it was there that I really got to learn the kind of the business mechanics behind airports and the systems and Part 77 services and so when my first airport management role came up for me, it was suddenly I'm leading teams, staff, and working with city councilors, opponents of the airport. And your reports are the mayor and whoever else it is for that town or municipality. So I was kind of thrown into that role, and so I learned as fast as I could on how to deal with conflict resolutions and unions and all these things that you're taught kind of generally in airport management courses, but in real life situations. So I did everything I could, podcasts, YouTube videos, called my mentors, and really kind of leaned into that role. And so when the position I have for Beverly Regional Airport now, I'm the airport manager there, I called one of my mentors before accepting the position, and I was like, I can't go there. They have declining operations. They're about to decrease the primary runway. There are no projects on the CIP. Why should I go there? And he said, if there are no projects, you make them. And so this past year, we were recognized as the standout airport in Massachusetts. We had 18% total growth in operations this past year. And we've developed all the land. We're actually out of space. We brought on 6 new tenants this year. And it was tireless work of meeting with individuals, stakeholders, businesses, cold calls, develop here, let's have a meeting. And so it was just people that were opponents to the airport, meeting with them and having them understand the economic contributions in the airport and actually what it means to the community was a huge part of what I did, just a lot of outreach and let's keep the optimism going. So it was, an airport that was looking at losing businesses and everything else to suddenly the standout airport. And it was one of my, I think, top accomplishments, and it helps me. It's a joy when I get to talk about what we're doing, and so for me it's living the passion and even the challenges. You look at them in a different way as a learning experience, and so for some of the students in here, you may not know what the role will lead you to, or you're in operations, or you're in these other positions, but you learn on every single one of those experiences, and so if it's you learn, and I wonder if you choose to learn, how that will affect your career. So,
well said. By the way, before we pivot to the questions here, if there are any questions now, raise your hand. We've got a microphone runner coming around here. So I'd like to ask the first question about pitfalls, career pitfalls, and pitfalls to avoid. So who would like to start with that?
So just a simple statement that you probably have learned when you're a little kid. Don't get into a fight you can't win, right? If somebody is bigger than you, figure out another big person to fight them so that you can just watch. So I was in Stockton Airport, and a developer, guy had tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, wanted to build houses right next to the airport. And I was opposed to that, clearly, and I was gaining some traction with the political body in shutting this thing down. It had to be rezoned, and they were holding the zoning up. Got really ugly. This guy, he threatened my family, he threatened me. He had tried to have me arrested, and I'll tell you that story, it's a great one. He tried to have me put in prison for perjury, but again, that's too much time to take right now. What I should have done, instead of getting bloodied and bruised, is we had Alex Spanos on the airport. He had a big jet center there, very much wanting to preserve the lack of noise sensitivity around the airport. I should have put the two of them together and let them duke it out and just got out of the way. I was way too small to be in that battle. So that would be the one that I would share with you.
Have you ever had an email where it's a really nasty email, and you spend the next night thinking how you're going to respond to it, and it really just affects you? So I would say that was something that I learned that earlier in my career. Take the moment, walk away from it, go on a run, go on a walk, go get a drink. No, but whatever it is, and then go back to it and with a clearer mind so that you don't send off something that you regret. That was something that, when you're working with tenants with other varying viewpoints, it was more important to understand coming at a situation kind of with your ducks in line and know what you want to say before you just answer, with something that you may regret.
Do not burn any bridges. The airport industry in particular is extremely small. So you're going to have disagreements, confrontations, and different outlook on different things that happen. We all do. We're all human beings, and we don't always line up on the same track. But depending on how you handle that confrontation, that person that you're having that confrontation with is going to end up at another airport. And they're going to have people that they talk to at that other airport, and then of course, all of a sudden, your dream job is going to be at that airport. And what's going to happen is you'll sit down, you'll have an interview, and they're like, oh, you used to work with so-and-so. And that's when you know, I'm waving the white flag, and I'm backing out of this job because I'm not going to get it, because you guys have already gossiped about whatever confrontation, whatever issue we had back when. So you want to keep everything on the up and up. Like Gloria said, sometimes just taking a deep breath and walking away, kind of responding to angry tenants or angry airport opponents. You kind of want to do that same thing with some of your coworkers or some of your supervisors and different people that you're dealing with. And like Barry said, only get into that fight if you are as big of a dog as the person that you're fighting with. But it's always best to just kind of, do the right thing for your organization, for your airport, go about your business on a positive way, and try to keep those bridges intact.
Thank you, Cyrus. Any sage comments from the seasoned directors here? Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next question. I'd like to ask the question to Barry about career pitfalls, maybe perhaps being siloed into one particular department like, say, operations.
Yeah. Well, two thoughts on that. One is I see a lot of people do get stuck in primarily operations or sometimes noise, whatever, and they don't get that breadth to get them to the next job. I mean, if you're okay retiring out of an operations job, that's great. But if you want to do something else, you want to do something broader or bigger, you need to go volunteer time at other departments at your airport. Go learn how to write a grant. Go learn how to do finance. Get with the public affairs people and figure out how to write a press release. Those are all critical skills that you'll use, and if you can put them on a resume, even though you're not really in that job, you kind of make it like an internship, it sells you to a potential employer, so definitely do that. But I want to also say, sometimes hard to break into airports, especially in operations, because there's a lot of folks coming out of school and only so many jobs. I know a particular gentleman that tried 5 years and just finally said, I'm not getting into this career field, I'll go do something else. Welton Trang, put your hand up, Welton. Welton did a lot of extracurricular things to break into the industry, and he's kind of a success story that I'd like to tell. He started with this organization, C.A.E., 5-6 years ago. When he was still a student, he would come with the student chapter, and he was the president of the student chapter, and he got very involved with us. We knew him, we knew about him. He did work on the C.A.E. boards, so we knew what his work ethic was like. So he started building a reputation. Then he came and worked for me at LAX for 2 years, unpaid, in an internship, and he did great, he really did. And you could watch the measured growth in Welton the more he tried these things and the more he exposed himself to these things. Ultimately, he leveraged the LAX experience into a part-time job in operations at Long Beach Airport, which became a full-time job. And about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, I hired Welton as an ops officer at my airport, which I think is a pretty good gig. And we just had this conversation the other day about broadening out. So, yeah.
So for this, for pitfalls, you know, I think, so I come from regional airport, so you wear many hats, and so it's easy for burnout. And sometimes it's hard to kind of designate positions or disseminate the responsibilities. So you're working exhausting hours, and so I know a lot of us kind of got there to get to the position we're in or we're still in. But for me right now, it's you don't want to get to the exhaustion or burnout rate. And so, like, again, following that work-life passion, because if I can have that break, if I can go flying and actually sometimes I raffle off tickets to the Chamber of Commerce, so I'll have people come with me on flights, and so they can see, you know, what it is. But for trying to avoid that burnout, you know, that was pretty important.
So, of course, in the airport industry, sometimes some of us have the opportunity, we can be with one organization for 20, 25 years and retire where we want to be, and others, we have to move around. So, depending on how you want your career to go, if your desire is to be an airport director somewhere, don't be afraid to move around. Sometimes you have to move in order to move up. And that's been the case in my career. I've moved from Denver to Chicago to Jacksonville to Orlando, and will Orlando be my last stop? Probably not. But you have to be open to those opportunities as they come available. I always liken it to, pretty sure a lot of football fans in here, especially with San Francisco being in the Super Bowl again. I don't know, I'm not a fan. Just kidding. But just in looking at NFL coaches, you know, they start off as coordinators and they get involved in these coaching trees, and then of course the head coach gets fired, and then they have to move on to another team. And with that, they're getting experience learning different philosophies from other coaching systems. And then when the opportunity comes for them to coach their team, then they're doing the same thing for the people that are working with them, their offensive coordinators and their defensive coordinators. And this is kind of blasphemy for me because I'm a soccer player. Should not be talking about NFL football. But I think, in a sense, the concept works the same way in airport management. You know, we have airport directors that we worked for and that have been huge influences on our career, and then different things happen and they may retire, or they may chase that consultant job, and then we're stuck having to move on to look at something else, or there's another opportunity that comes up that we're interested in, and we move on from there. But take all of that knowledge that you get from every opportunity, just like Gloria and Barry have said with their walks, take all of that information and use that to make yourself the most complete airport professional that you can be.
Well said. If I were a new grad or a senior graduating this May, how would I break out and perhaps obtain an internship with a private company and not necessarily an airport? I know, Gloria, you've worked for a planning company in the past. What does that look like? How could a student or a recent grad get to that?
Actually, we have a lot of individuals that ask, that go through my office to ask to work with our tenants. And so I do understand, for some of the tenants, it's a responsibility for, when you're overseeing an intern, not just from a liability standpoint, but so a lot of times we work with them, and I've seen the interns actually start progressing into job shadowing, and then eventually they move on either with another company or another firm. So. Yeah, it's highly encouraged to go seek it out if there is that opportunity on paid, or even just a job shadowing.
And is it difficult to say, if you're working for a privately held company, to go into public sector? Is that possible? I know Kevin Flynn had a really good success with Kimley Horn. What did that look like for him, and how did he do that successfully?
Well, first of all, you have to know that Kevin and I have a long-established relationship. He was my first FAA grant guy at Little Lompoc Airport, and we got something like $7 million for this little tiny airport in the middle of nowhere because I learned what he needed to be successful, and he was willing to help me be successful. So he did go into the private sector. We kept talking. We kept in touch. He lives near where my airport is, so we'd have lunch on a regular basis, and he started telling me that he wanted to get into the airport world as opposed to consulting for a host of reasons. Some of it, the life-work balance that Gloria talked about. So I ultimately created a position for him, and because he's in charge of maintenance. We have dads, deputy airport director. So he's the dad of maintenance. He knows nothing about airport maintenance, but he's a great leader. He's a great guy. He's a quality person with great ethics, somebody I can trust, and I have loyalty to, and believe he has loyalty to me. So that's why these things are so important. The sessions are great, but what we do out in that hallway out there or at the billiard parlor, those conversations, playing golf, whatever, where you get to know somebody deep down, you learn about their kids or who they are and what's the latest catastrophe in their life or the latest success. You build a bond. And that bond is crucial. Again, he knows nothing about maintenance, but he's doing a bang-up job because of who he is. And I'd just like to take a second, real quick. There's an epiphany that has come to me lately, and I want to share it with you. It's very deeply moving to me. You know what? I'm just going to save this till the end.
It's a cliffhanger. All right, so what I have to say, it doesn't matter if you're going into the private sector or the public sector. If you're a student trying to break into the industry, you all can actually take the certified member exam with the A.A.E. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're showing future employers that you're making that investment into, in addition to your college degree, but into the airport industry itself. And so we've had people that have taken the CM exam that work for airlines. We have people that have taken the CM exam that have actually not even been involved in the airport industry itself, but board members, county commissioners, whoever, it shows that you're making an investment on an education basis into the airport industry itself. And so one of the reasons, since I've been chair, I've been trying to find out, how and why the Certified Member Program came to be. And Spencer Dickerson of the A.A.E. said it was an outreach program that they wanted to involve people that had an interest in the airport industry but didn't necessarily work in the airport industry itself. And so I thought that this is a huge opportunity to even get more people exposed into it. And college students, you all are at the front door in that aspect, and that momentum by taking that exam is going to further help put your foot in the door to open up opportunities down the line. There's going to be tons of people that you're going to be competing for those operations jobs. And if you show up with the CM already behind your name, it just may help kind of lessen some of that competition your way. And that's going to be the case for both the private sector and the public sector. Because I know a lot of consultant firms that are looking for people that have CMs, so when they respond to requests for qualifications for a variety of different jobs, it shows that you know how to speak the airport management language.
Any questions from the audience? We've got a captive panel here of very approachable professionals here who've got some really interesting stories to tell. I invite the students definitely through this week to reach out to the people here that you see around you, the seasoned professionals. Usually have gray hair and glasses. And I encourage you to really reach out and learn and ask the questions. It really, really does make a difference. So what else is on our mind?
Well, for those of you that are here and are contemplating, I don't know how many accredited airport executives we have in the room. If you're a A.A.E., raise your hand just so I know. Yeah. So I've always likened the accreditation to an accountant having a CPA. I know it's about to be tax season, and me personally, to avoid the audit, I take my taxes over to the CPA. Now, I know some people are more comfortable doing TurboTax, and my significant other does hers that way. I don't want to skate down that path. I just go the CPA route. And so I think that there's a lot of airport sponsors that kind of look that way. You have best practices, and we heard a great presentation earlier from Gary about best practices earlier today. And that same thing can be said about the accreditation program. We're giving you best practices on airport management. We're telling you about grant assurances. We're telling you about things that are potentially going to keep you and your airport sponsors out of jail and keep you from stepping on landmines that you'd rather avoid. And it's going to help you be a more complete airport executive, because you're going to go through scenarios, you're going to be tested on things that previous airport directors have gone through before you. So for those of you that are teetering on the edge and trying to determine, well, I'm already an airport director, I don't really need it, and I've heard that a lot since I've been in this role, look at the people that are coming behind you that do need the accreditation in order to get into that position that you're in. It's just going to expose so much more of an understanding to the industry that you work in, and why not be at the top of your craft? Why not validate the information that you come along learning on a day in, day out basis and put that behind your name with those letters? So I would imagine that's why people would want to go through that in the first place. But it's a valuable program to this industry and a valuable program across all the chapters. So.
No, but I will add a little funny story this one time. So you come across many, in the airport management role, I know there are many executives with us, but you come across many different organizations, community groups, associations, and you deal with noise a lot. And so it's a very sometimes inflammatory conversation, and so there are a lot of groups with it. This one time, I was going into a ward meeting, and as I was being escorted into the meeting, I knew that the person was like, they hate the airport, they hate you, they, everything about it. And so I went in and it was kind of like a beehive. It was very tense. People were very emotional about it, as some of you may know. And so I was able to explain things, to answer their questions, show them diagrams, and so really connect with them kind of more on an intimate level. And at the end of it, I actually got an applause. People were coming up, shaking my hand, and I kind of felt like a celebrity. I'm like, "Do you want autographs?" And it was almost like, "You get sound installation." It was just. So, it was just trying to connect with these community groups and constant outreach with these individuals. And so sometimes and making that time for the people in the community makes a huge difference, so.
Thank you. And one more time for the students, I'd really like you to approach some of these A.A.E. Folks here. So again, the A.A.Es, could you raise your hand one more time, please? Students, look around, and I'd encourage you to talk to these people, ask the questions, what got them fired up to take that, as well as how they got to where they are today. So before we close with Barry, I'd like to thank our panelists from flying all the way. All the way from Florida, Massachusetts, and of course Barry just from down the road in Orange County. So Barry's going to wrap up with this little epiphany here, and we're going to get you out 5 minutes early today.
Okay, so as I alluded to, there's something that's been working on my mind a lot, almost, question, almost like a time bomb. It's actually my daughter, Katie, that shared the thought with me, and maybe it'll be meaningful to you. I hope it will be, because it's been just real, a deeply seated thing for me. I'm just going to say it. There is no way everybody could have been kung fu fighting.
Thank you. Okay, that wraps up our session today. Thank you very much for coming today. Barry, keep your day job.
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Comments?
Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing. Oh, funky China man from funky Chinatown. Chopping them up, they were chopping them down. Ancient Chinese art, and everybody needs to be hard. Landing to a stick, and a kick hit from the fist. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. It was a little bit frightening, hey, but they fought with expert timing. There was funky Billy Jean and Big Savage Jaw. He said, "Here comes the big boss. Let's get it on." To the ball and made stand, started swaying with the hand. Motion made me skip. Get your breath quick. Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Check. All right, everybody, we're going to be going on break with exhibitors till 3 o'clock. So we'll be doing a raffle with the exhibitors here in about 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. So we'll see you back at 3 o'clock.